Hello, this is Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer.
Welcome home.
Soaring to tower. We are ready for takeoff.
Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hey, it's Amy from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey Clubbers, it's Scott from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, it's Kathleen from DVC Clubhouse.
Welcome aboard. It's Phil from DVC Clubhouse.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Debrief Podcast, brought to you by DVC Clubhouse. This is Amy, joined by my co-hosts, Kathleen, Scott, and Phil.
Hi, guys.
She
You'll
went
just stare
reverse
at
this
me now.
time.
Yeah, I
That
did.
that was intentional, I think.
She had to think really hard about it, though. You actually watched her trying to read from right to left. It messed her right up.
Hi guys.
Oh,
Did you say hi?
I did.
Hi guys.
Welcome aboard, guys.
Hello, everyone. So on our last episode, we were talking about adult-only trips, and the topic of Wilderness Lodge came up because we were talking about different resorts and what would be appropriate for adult-only stays and different variety of adult-only trips. And we started to just talk a little bit about the pros and cons of Wilderness Lodge overall. And so we decided that we're going to take a deep dive into that resort today. We haven't done a resort specific episode in a while. So welcome aboard to the Wilderness Lodge episode.
And I need to redeem myself for my astonishing revelation at the end of the last episode.
I don't think so.
You redeemed yourself in our eyes by admitting
Oh, well, I'm glad you're proud of me.
that you actually think it'll be fun to stay at Fort Wilderness if you were on a guy's trip. So
Well, I was going to say with Scott. Let's just qualify that statement. I don't think it would be fun to stay at Fort Wilderness. I think it would be fun to stay at Fort Wilderness with Scott and the boys.
however it happens, it's fine with me, you know?
We'll send
Scott,
you pictures. We'll
Just
send
remember,
pictures.
what happens at Fort Wilderness stays at Fort Wilderness, buddy.
Oh no, we'll take pictures. We'll send pictures out.
They will definitely be posted in the Clubhouse Facebook group.
I don't think those photos will be appropriate for the Clubhouse Facebook if we take them on that trip, but we'll send them amongst a small group of very close friends. How's that? Those will live in infamy along with Scott's old Key West video.
Yes.
Oh no. All right. Well, before we drive this train off the tracks already at 2 minutes into the episode, let's get back topic at hand, which is Wilderness Lodge. I own at Copper Creek. I have a small contract there. I love Wilderness Lodge. I've said it in other episodes. I would have preferred to have bought at Boulder Ridge because I prefer Boulder Ridge to Copper Creek, but the expiration date pushed me to Copper Creek. But overall, I mean, I love Wilderness Lodge. It is, Boulder Ridge is in my top 3, despite the things that I think are definitely some shortcomings. I think this resort has a lot to offer, and we actually just did a poll recently of what people think. People in the Facebook group, the DVC Clubhouse Facebook group, think is the most zen resort. And Boulder Ridge won by a pretty large margin.
It was my vote.
My vote.
Yeah, got my vote too.
Not my vote.
Shocking.
But what was your vote, Scott?
Fort Wilderness. For good reason, though. What's more zen than nature?
I would argue nature with a first world bathroom and accommodations, but that's just me.
Well, Boulder Ridge won that poll, and Copper Creek got a bunch of votes too. So, I mean, overall, I think Wilderness Lodge stole the show with that poll. Really is the resort that people want to go to if they want to just relax.
Well, you mentioned the drawbacks of Wilderness Lodge. I can only think of one. What else do you have?
I have one.
Oh, I know what yours is.
Oh, we all know what
Well,
that is. It
this
took
is
me a second.
This is a very specific grievance that
It
Kathleen
is.
has that she will carry with her. It is a grudge. This is a
I was going to say
grudge.
she's still carrying that grudge.
Kathleen, do you want to share with the audience so you can let them in on the
You know, I love Geyser Point. I love sitting out there. I could sit there for hours, but they have lost my business for quite a while now because they got rid of the barbecue brisket chips. And it's their number one. It was their number one seller. I have no idea why they got rid of it, but going there now without them there is not the same. We're in and out. We don't linger.
rip barbecue brisket chips.
I think she
I
meant
hope-
R.I.P., but that's okay.
I really hope
I
they
did.
bring them back.
Rip.
But that's
I'm
my
talking
only
the teenage
complaint.
language.
Oh,
When
sorry.
my teenagers say rip everything, rip this, rip that.
But that is my only complaint with Wilderness Lodge. Really, it's the only one.
And we have not been back.
We have.
Well, when you found out, you tried the replacement, which are these god awful plant based mac and cheese bites. And then since then,
We have not been back.
we have not been back.
Well, one could argue that that's a terrible thing to order, but as a
Fair
former
enough.
vegan, I don't think that I would have ordered those, but
A reformed vegan.
I had to see what the big hype was of, what took over the barbecue brisket chips. And it was trash.
Tell us how you really feel.
I mean, even our waitress was shocked. She's like, I have no idea why they got rid of it. She's like, it's the number one seller.
But here's your trash.
Yeah.
I mean, I think from a detraction standpoint, I have one big issue with Wilderness Lodge and one smaller issue with Wilderness Lodge, and it's really the only two places I can hit them. And shockingly, with this crowd, the one big detraction I have is the dining is okay. There's not amazing dining at Wilderness Lodge. I think Whispering Canyon is fun, but it's not a great meal. I think they really gain their crowds based on the fun quirkiness of the meal. I think, is it Artist Point? I always get Artist Point, Artist Palette mixed up. Artist Point, I think, is overpriced for what you get. We were not impressed. The kids didn't love it. I think I said in a previous episode, it was a lot of money for dry ice to show up in a box. The Evil Queen was a lot of fun. Other than that, there's not great dining at Wilderness Lodge. And I
Not
think
at
the
all.
small hit I can give them is that their feature pool is small. And as Amy has famously said, their water scooch is unexciting. I think the pool is beautiful. I think looking up at the grandeur of that hotel in front of you as you're holding on to the waterfall that comes out of the lobby is awesome. But for the number of people they pile in that pool, I think the feature pool is lackluster. Now, with that said, I love the Geyser Point pool. A little bit of lack of shade, but it's probably my number 2 quiet pool on property. I think it's awesome. But really, those are the only 2 hits I can give Wilderness Lodge. I can't come up with other big issues as I see it.
so yeah, I agree with those. I mean, I have the same. Those are like my 2 of like my major complaints. Plus, I have a couple of other just small grievances. But just to talk about dining, I think that really the thing with Wilderness Lodge that really hurts it is that, most of the deluxe resorts, particularly, really deluxe resorts. I'm not talking about DVC resorts. I'm talking about deluxe resorts that are like, that actually like have a hotel side to them. They have an experience type of dining, like a character experience, but they have a restaurant that you could go back to, like a repeatability factor. And I don't think that Whispering Canyon or Storybook Dining at Artist Point have a repeatability factor, even in like, certainly not on the same trip. Like, I don't need to go to either of those restaurants twice. And not that that's something that I do on most trips, but if the weather wasn't great or, you're at the resort for whatever reason, Geyser Point has a limited menu. So I just think that your options for just going and getting a solid meal at a place where you're just going for the meal and not for the experience of it it's just vastly limiting. And even so for repeat trips, I don't need to do either of those experiences on every trip. So you have two very niche dining experiences as the only table service, full table service restaurants at that resort. And while I know that storybook dining is popular and maybe Artist Point before they converted it into a character dinner experience, maybe it wasn't drawing the crowd, but that was disappointing to me because I just feel like you don't need two very niche experiences at one resort, especially when there is not another type of restaurant like at California. I mean, sorry, I just called Contemporary California Grill because I like, to me, they're one and the same. They should just rename Contemporary California Grill and it would then become my favorite resort. But anyhow, Contemporary has Steakhouse 71, which is like a little bit more of like, a mid-level dining experience. Polynesian has Kona Cafe. Grand Floridian has the Grand Floridian Cafe. And you've got over on Crescent Lake, Cape May Cafe. I mean, I guess you could call that a like a niche dining experience. But you do have Beaches and Cream, so you have something that's a little bit more just a basic meal.
And a ton of lounges and a ton of other things. There's a lot more there than just the quirky sit downs.
Yeah. So I think that Wilderness Lodge, because it is a little bit isolated too, it's like you're just there. Like you have to take a boat or a bus to get any place else. The dining really is like, to me, it's like they could really, really do something there to step up the dining. And I don't know that it's necessarily get rid of either of the two. I don't know where they would add a third restaurant, but I wish that they would. Something that's just a little bit more of like your mid-level table service experience where your kids aren't going to get like totally overstimulated by ketchup and wooden horse races and people screaming or being, surrounded by characters. And like, those are like two very like big experiences. And I just don't think that like for a family, there's not like a good family dining experience that's not going to be like super stimulating to your kids. Or if you're there, like we were talking about for an adults only trip, I have no interest in eating at either of those places without my kids.
Just that the fact that it's so remote, I think, is what makes that problematic. I mean, you have the blue line on the boats that will take you to Fort Wilderness and Contemporary. Contemporary has a couple of options that make it viable. I think Trails End in its previous life was definitely a great meal for us. We thought it was fantastic when it was a buffet. But when you stay at other resorts, we've talked about this, when you come in later in the day and you need something at night, or you're having a resort day and you need food around. If you're staying on Crescent Lake, there's a lot of easily available options. If you're staying on the monorail loop, there's a lot of easily available options. And I've given Old Key West the same shade. There's not great dining there. Olivia's is good, but I don't know that it's got a lot of repeatability. Their quick service, I think, is not good at all. So when you are remote like that in a place like Old Key West or a place like Wilderness Lodge, you need to go elsewhere to get food. The lack of solid, repeatable dining options in that resort is problematic because there's nowhere you can easily get to, as with other resorts, that give you a lot of options. I think they need to widen that repertoire a little bit over at Wilderness Lodge to make it a lot easier to stay on property. I mean, for a resort only stay, I think the grounds are beautiful, the views are beautiful. But if you're doing a resort only stay, there's not a lot of options there at Wilderness Lodge.
I also think if you're paying cash to stay at Wilderness Lodge, you're paying a lot of money. And your table service experiences are, I mean, that would be a deterrent for me from staying at Wilderness Lodge if I was paying cash. Because just give me a restaurant like, and I would actually argue that Olivia's does have a repeatability factor because you can get in easily. It has like a pretty basic big menu where anybody in your dining party can find something that they like. Wilderness Lodge, it is very niche, and the lounges, at least over like when we were just over at, Yacht Club, those lounges had a good menu that had something that would appeal to everyone. Territory Lounge, while I really like it, I think that those menu items don't have broad appeal. You know, I think that they're kind of like foodie-ish, which is nice for some people and maybe, for, adults, but I don't think that your kids would be excited to be eating there,
I don't dislike Olivia's. I don't typically throw shade at it. I think it's a good meal. I don't dislike it nearly as much as other people do. I've said before, their prime rib beef stew is one of the best soups I've ever had at property. Oh, which, by the way, we had a lemon chicken soup at the Floridian Cafe a couple of weeks ago that was to die for. I need to remake that. I think the problem, as you pointed out, is you have really two meal options at Wilderness Lodge. They're super high end, kind of fancy prefix menu, and then you've got this kitschy all you care to enjoy. There's not that middle of the road like Trattoria, like Olivia's, like Grand Floridian Cafe. It's opposite ends of the spectrum. There's nothing to me that's right up the center that satisfies everybody.
And so I find myself when I stay there, if I am there with my kids, they like to go to Whispering Canyon Cafe once, but I'm not really dining on property unless, I'll grab something at Geyser Point. But even at that, the Geyser Point menu is very limited to me. Like, they have a good salad that I like, so I might grab that for lunch, but I don't want to eat there for dinner. The last, when we were there for Clubhouse weekend, we ordered a bunch of stuff from that menu, and I didn't really love the wings there. I didn't think that they were great. I don't know. Geyser Point, people like rave about the food. For me, it's more about the ambiance than it is about the food. And, I can get a salad there. And I think that as a DVC member using points, like, I'm okay with it. But if I was there staying on the hotel side, I think I would feel disappointed in the dining experience at that resort, because it is like just so highly themed and niche. So that's definitely, for me, one of the issues with Wilderness Lodge, like kind of like one of like the shortfalls for me. And does anybody else have anything to say about dining before we move on?
You guys pretty much said what I was already thinking. Dining wise, Whispering Canyon, we've done 3 times now, and every time it's been disappointing. We've done Storybook once and haven't been back just because of, like what Phil said, it's just overpriced. I mean, it's good, I guess, just to do it one time to say that you did it. Territory Lounge.
You should go back to Storybook just once, though, so you could actually try the dessert without Kathleen stealing it the second it hits the table.
Yeah, honestly, I heard it's a heart truffle, but I have no idea what it tastes like. What else? Oh, Territory Lounge. I like Territory Lounge. I think Territory Lounge is actually, I don't know. I like the food options that they have with the flatbread, and they have the popcorn, which I think the kids kind of enjoy that but I don't know. I think it's a different option. And Geyser Point, like Amy said, is more for the ambiance. People talk about the burger. What's it called?
The Bison Burger?
Yeah. And
I have tried to get that twice, and on both occasions, they have told me they didn't have it that day. So for all the time we've spent there and the times I've tried to get it, I'll just have to rely on everybody else's reports, because for some reason it has not been available on both of our stays.
It's okay. Like, I mean, I don't sit there and dream about it like some people do, but it's just okay. Yeah, I think we pretty much... Go ahead.
I do like Territory Lounge, and I like the menu items because I think that they're unique. I think that like my issue is that unique is not going to be for everyone, especially for kids. So in a place where you kind of have limited table service, it would be nice if that lounge menu had like a little bit more of like a broader appeal. And it would also be nice if the dishwasher worked.
I was just going to say that. Let's tell the real reason why you don't like it.
Speaking of grudges that are still being held to this day.
Yeah.
Yes. I just think it's ridiculous that they've had a broken dishwasher for months. I mean, come on. That's another thing. If I was paying cash, it's one thing as like a DVC member, and yes, like I pay maintenance dues, like whatever, every year, and it's disappointing that it's not fixed. But when you're somebody who's spending $10,000 on a vacation and you want to go down and order a glass of wine at the bar, and they tell you, well, our dishwasher is broken, so I'm going to give it to you in this plastic cup, you're like, oh, really? Because my room is $650 a night. Like, that's absurd. So anyway, that is a one of my my smaller grudges that I have about Wilderness Lodge is the broken dishwasher at Territory Lounge.
Do you have other small issues with it? Because we've spent like 15 minutes crapping on it after talking about how we love Wilderness Lodge so much. So at some point, we should probably get to the things we like.
So, well, no, and I do want to, also address what you said about the pools. Particularly the feature pool, it's too small. The water slide is just, it can't even call itself a slide. And then two other things. One is the noise that you hear, at least staying in Copper Creek. And I've said this before. I could literally hear every single conversation that every single person had. When I was in my room, people waiting for the elevator, I could hear it. I felt like my door was open. So like there's like a noise situation going on. And maybe it's because once they've replaced the carpet with the laminate flooring that they put down or whatever, it is more echoey, but that was annoying. And then finally, while it is close to Magic Kingdom and to you can take a boat over to Contemporary after 3 p.m., you do have the issue of being like a little bit isolated and needing to take a bus everywhere else. As somebody who owns there, I have very specific times when I want to stay there, because I'm definitely not going to stay there if I'm looking to be going to Epcot a ton for a festival. And we talked about this in the How to Stay Cool episode. I don't think that it's a great a great resort for staying at when it's really hot, but it's a great resort for staying at during the cooler months and the holidays. It just has a great vibe. I have, beyond just being there for the holidays, where it's just so gorgeous in that lobby, and the Boulder Ridge lobby is so beautiful, and just overall the theming of the resort lends itself to that like holiday, winter type of vibe. I love going down to Geyser Point and watching football there. I've watched the Masters there. There are so many things about this resort that I love, that I'm actually, as somebody who really values good restaurants and great dining experiences, I still rank Boulder Ridge as my top 3, in spite of the fact that I find the dining options to be lackluster, because I just find this resort overall to be so unique, so beautiful, so well themed, so beautifully situated on Bay Lake. It was so well done. And that's why, and I think that's why, like when I'm talking about the dining, or I'm talking about the things that are shortfalls, these are the things that prevent this resort from like being my number 1. It is number 3 for me. It could be number 2 or number 1 if the dining was addressed, and if I thought that the main pool was bigger and better. But I agree with you, Phil. I think that the Boulder Ridge pool is so great. It is never, to me, it's never too crowded.
Mhm.
It is well themed. It's very close to Geyser Point, so that you have easy access to food and drinks. It's not that far from your room, really, like it's right outside the door, versus like in some others where you need to walk a little bit to get to the pool. That's a really nice feature.
And this is going to sound really weird, but we all know that I'm a gym rat. It's right next to the gym. So it's easy to, have the kids and Emily at the pool, and I can go very quickly to the gym. Boardwalk ranks really high there with me as well because it's so close to the pool. I just want to make one point. Aside from the pool issue for the hot summer months, I don't mind it when it's super hot out, because you want to talk about late night ambiance when it starts to cool down. I think walking Boulder Ridge specifically, not Copper Creek, because it's part of the main building, but walking to those rooms at night after the sun goes down and it just starts to cool off, whether you're coming from the boats on the dock and coming back, and that boat ride back from Magic Kingdom at night when it finally starts to cool down and the sun goes down. I actually like it in the hotter months, specifically for that time of day. I think it's a phenomenal option. And one more gripe that I have, and I can't believe I didn't bring this up because it is our single largest issue with Wilderness Lodge. If I am spending that kind of money to stay at a deluxe resort and it is only bus service to all of the parks, I do not want to share that bus with another resort and I do not want to be crammed on that bus for a half hour going through every single loop of Fort Wilderness before you bring me to Epcot. I think that's an insult to people spending the money they spend to stay at a deluxe resort to have to share that bus line. It drives me absolutely out of my mind.
That's your issue that you had.
I was just saying that. I think the fact that they have to share a bus has to be a shortcoming of that. I mean, yeah, you could take a boat, but if the boats are down or, whatever, you're forced to take that bus. And I just think, we kind of crap on Animal Kingdom for that same reason. And I really don't want to share with Fort Wilderness, like Phil said. I just think that's taking up a huge amount of your time when you have, time is valuable when you're on vacation.
The last time we stayed, it was May. It was hot, and we boarded for Epcot at Wilderness Lodge, and it was over 35 minutes to get to Epcot. We went through every loop and packed more people on a bus than I have ever seen, with that door constantly opening and closing, with a bunch of sweaty individuals waiting to get to Epcot. I'm not going to lie, I was enraged that we did that and packed that many people on a bus and spent that much time going through Fort Wilderness before we were brought to the theme park. That to me was just unacceptable for a deluxe resort.
Definitely. Yeah, you guys, I think all of the knocks and the shortcomings that we've talked about are on my list. And it's so funny. This is the only resort that I can think of that manages to be in my bottom 3 for 10 months out of the year. And then the other 2 months out of the year, it's in my top 3. And I can forgive every shortcoming that they have just because of how it feels. We talk about the feels again, but how it feels when those Christmas decorations go up, my whole perspective changes about that resort.
All right, we talk about the feels and how shockingly it manages to maintain such a high position on our list despite having some serious shortcomings. What do we love about this resort?
Well, I think that something that we mentioned as a drawback and like it kind of being isolated, that also is a positive for me because despite it being so gorgeous, it never feels chaotic. And you've got, like I've said, one of my complaints about Grand Floridian is that often it can feel very chaotic in that lobby. I've never been in the Wilderness Lodge lobby and felt like it was swarming with people, even at Christmas time. And that I like because it doesn't feel like you're staying in a tourist attraction. It feels like you're staying in a resort. And you've got sort of it kind of feels exclusive a little bit because you're not sharing common space with people who are not staying at the resort.
The Grand Ceremonial House at Polynesian has to be on that list as well. It's the one drawback of Polynesian is it's such a draw to people that staying there, just walking through the Grand Ceremonial House with Ohana and Kona and the monorail and everything else, it seems like all of humanity has descended upon the resort that you're staying at as a guest.
Yeah, it's like you're at a shopping mall with like people coming and going and that you don't have that at Wilderness Lodge. So you have this grand lobby that's so beautiful without the feeling of people being everywhere. And that lobby really is. I mean, and the thing with that lobby too is that even though Whispering Canyon is there and is a loud restaurant, because of the size of the lobby, like it kind of absorbs the sound so that when you're in the lobby, you don't feel like you're having a server shouting in your ear, even though you're like, sitting in the lobby. So just like the grand scale of the lobby and how beautiful it is and that fireplace, that is like number one. You walk into that resort, whether it's the holidays or not, and it just feels like you've arrived someplace.
That lobby is amazing. It's right up there, I think, with Animal Kingdom and Grand Californian for one reason is those views from the second, third, fourth floor. You walk down the hallway and they've got these little alcoves and points where you can sit and there's tables and you just look out at this amazingly beautiful cavernous lobby. It's awe-inspiring, it's overwhelming just to sit there and look out at what they've done here, and you kind of get that, "Wow, I've arrived" feeling, like, you really just get overwhelmed with how amazing it is to look out over all of that. And then, especially with Wilderness Lodge, you've got the stream running through the lobby and the bridge that goes over the top. It's absolutely stunning.
I was going to say that it's the way that they carry the lobby, the theming of the lobby, and like the grandeur of the lobby with that stream out onto the grounds. I don't think that there's another resort at Disney World that does that kind of draws you outside and then keeps you feeling in awe as you step outside and you look at those, like those like fake rock formations, and you follow the stream and you walk over the bridge. Like, it's just so pretty. And again, not teaming with people out there either, so you can walk around that area and just take it in, and you could see Bay Lake in the distance, and that it really is like just so stunning. And it feels, despite it being a deluxe resort with this beautiful grand lobby, it is what our clubhouse members voted to be the most zen resort, because it has a very peaceful feel despite it being so grand.
I love it
Pinnacle. I'm
early
sorry, go ahead,
morning.
Kathleen.
I said I love it early morning time over there at Geyser Point, like before anybody's up, the sun's coming up, and then I like it late at night over there. Like early morning, late at night are like perfect at that resort.
I think specifically people voted Boulder Ridge as their number one. And I was just going to say, we were talking about Christmas. We were talking about the decorations. You can talk about how grand that tree is in that lobby, over at the main entrance. All of the little nooks and crannies where you can just kind of get away and relax. If you want to read a book, if you want to sit at the little private
You fell asleep up
fireplace.
there one night.
What's that?
You fell asleep up there one day.
I did a half marathon and we were waiting for our room. We found a nice little comfy seat right in front of one of those fireplaces up on like the 4th floor. And I fell asleep for like an hour. I mean, it is peaceful as can be. But when I think of that resort and I think about what gave me the feels and what I love the most about it, it was the lobby at Boulder Ridge. It really was. I mean, it was the holidays when we were there.
The smell,
The colors, the whole theming of it. And that's what made me forgive everything that I normally don't like about that resort. To me, any other time of the year, I really don't have a reason that makes me specifically want to go there. But when you're talking about the holidays, I have to go to Boulder Ridge. I love being there. I think it's probably my top resort, even over my beloved Grand Floridian. It just makes me takes me back to my childhood. I feel
it reminds us of home.
Yes, it really does. I mean, you think about cabins in Ohio. I mean, they go hand in hand. Every other house, it seems like in Ohio is a cabin, but definitely hits you in the feels, gives you that nostalgia as a kid. And yeah, I don't think you really can't beat that resort at Christmas time for sure.
I think in general, I was going to say this Grand Floridian to some extent, definitely Boardwalk, Beach, Yacht. This is the pinnacle of Michael Eisner hotel building, and the resort tells a story. Every aspect of this resort was painstakingly planned out to tell a story. You feel like you are in the middle of an enormous lodge at the national parks. You've got that whole feel that, it's like an Ansel Adams photo come to life. It's just incredible to be there. And Scott made a good point. When we conducted the poll, Copper Creek was not at the top of this list for Zen feeling. It was very much Boulder Ridge. And when you talk about the story, you pull down Timberline Drive and under that giant arch, and you're already, even though you're only 400 feet, 300 feet from the monorail line when you pull in, you have entered a totally different piece of the property. It goes back to the original Roy's cabin that was back there on the side of the lake. I was just reading a book, The Hidden Secrets of Walt Disney World, and it talks about what all of that was. Early in the building, the people who were working on Epcot were in trailers over there, and they would kayak down the little tributaries and streams to get to Epcot in the morning. You are in the middle of the wilderness there. You pull up in front of that lobby, and it's just the whole building is looking down on you, and you walk in the lobby, and we talked about the grandeur of it. But Boulder Ridge is something different. you walk out that side door and you go down these paths, and all of the sidewalks have the little animal footprints that have been pressed into the concrete. And you've got that overhead covering, and all of that Western music is playing in your ears as you're walking down. And even though the lobby is very quiet, it gets even quieter as you go down into Boulder Ridge and you walk into that lobby, and it is very welcoming. It's very, I don't want to say quaint, but very small. You've got that side room that has the Carolwood Pacific car from Walt. It's got all the photos. You've got those cutouts in the middle that go in front of the fireplaces in the Boulder Ridge lobby. Then you get up to your room and you look out across Bay Lake towards Riles/Discovery Island, and the electrical water pageant comes by. Boulder Ridge, even though it's part of Wilderness Lodge, we talk about Wilderness Lodge being separated from the park. Boulder Ridge is another step separated from Wilderness Lodge when you talk about being away from the hustle and bustle. I don't know what it is in the last 2 episodes. When I think of Boulder Ridge, I think about getting off that boat, coming back from the Magic Kingdom, and walking up that dock past the cabins and walking past the geyser and walking down those footpaths with the animal topiaries and the footprints in the concrete. Every step gets quieter and quieter. And even when there aren't bugs, they are piping in the sound of the animals and the bugs. You truly take a step out of the parks when you go to Boulder Ridge.
I was just going to say, you are at Disney, but that resort, you can go in there and forget completely about where you technically are, because it could be 90 degrees outside. I still want to sit in front of that fireplace, get my nice cup of warm hot cocoa with the mini marshmallows, and you could swear if you look outside, you're going to see it snowing outside. And that's just how well themed that resort is.
Yeah, Boulder Ridge is my number 3 behind Beach Club and Boardwalk. And honestly, it could, like I said, it could move up if some of the things that I find to be, a shortfall were addressed. Because Boulder Ridge too, like it gives me the feels big time. That lobby at Christmas time, and even not at Christmas time, like it's small, it's like quaint and grand at the same time, if that even makes sense. It's like it captures this like feeling that in a way, like it was just so well done.
It's cozy. It's enormous and it's cozy. I don't think quaint. It's
Yeah.
cozy, I think, is the
Yes,
word that
that's
comes
what
to
it
mind
is.
when I think about
You're
it. Even
right.
though the ceiling is 100 feet above you and it's this enormous lobby and this enormous space, it's cozy.
Yeah, and I was so relieved that with this refurb, they avoided the trend that they have been adapting in a lot of the other refurbs where they are kind of not really being that colorful. I was so happy that they kept the kind of true to what the inspiration of the resort was and kept the color, because that's so important. So I was really pleased with that. And also, you mentioned the gym. I also think they have a great gym.
Absolutely.
Beyond just the proximity to the pool, it's a nice size. I think it's got for as far as like gym views can go, it's got a better, like one of the better views, because you get to look outside and see the trees, and you can kind of see the pool. So, I think that is great. And I love their merchandise shop. I think is great. It's one of my,
One of the best on property for very
yeah.
specific, repeatable merchandise.
Yeah. So I love that. And for as much as we talked about dining, and as much as I think that the menu at Geyser Point is limited, I love that spot so much because of that view. And I think that this is a resort, Bay Lake is not man-made. Bay Lake and all of the wildlife surrounding it is what it was. And that is something where I feel like when I'm sitting there, I'm not just at Disney World. Like I am in the middle of a kind of like ecosystem that existed that isn't just this man-made experience. I'm able to kind of experience the best of both worlds, like the nature of it all, the natural beauty of it all, and then the, man-made theming of it
Well,
all.
Riles Island, which became Discovery Island before it was purchased by Disney, was actually a fishing lodge where this group of guys used to go out and fish and party, similar to the Fort Wilderness trip that Scott and I are taking. But they had a boat dock on either side, and people would come and yell and scream, and the owner would come across in his boat and bring them back out there, and they'd all hang out and fish and look at the wildlife and hunt. It is probably one of the places on property that has held true to its origins. That is always what that area was, and they've done a very good job of maintaining that. And maybe that's why you get that feel, because that's what it is, and they haven't attempted to change it and turn it into something different.
And to, give a little nod to Copper Creek, those cabins are amazing. I mean, they are expensive points wise and cash wise, but that morning that Kathleen and I were having coffee at that picnic table on the patio, the morning after the cabin party that we had over Clubhouse weekend, just sitting there watching the boats go by. From where we were, we could see the monorail. We were also able to see Magic Kingdom fireworks at night. Probably the most serene accommodations that you could have on Disney property are those cabins. I mean, I think Fort Wilderness cabins will be serene, but nothing like being right up on the water, seeing the boats pass by. They're you can almost reach out and touch them, and those are absolutely spectacular. They did such a good job of building those and having, that entire backside that's facing the water be all windows so that you could get natural light to come in. And those are absolutely, I'm so happy that I've stayed in one, and I really need to stop using my Copper Creek points so that I can bank some and be able to stay there for more than one night, because I absolutely love those. And I think that they did a really nice job of, in that resort, there are some fun little touches. They have the hidden Mickey hunt that you can do. And it's fun that those were built intentionally into the resort when they were building it, that those weren't just add-ons. Those were intentional. And that's fun. And that's a fun thing to do. I mean, talk about, we didn't talk about that on the what to do on a hot day, but that is something to do if it's raining or if it's super hot. Doing that hidden Mickey hunt is lots of fun. And also even the geyser, it might be some people might think it's silly or kitschy, but it's fun. It's a fun little touch, and the kids love it. It just adds a touch of fun to that resort that just brings joy to people.
Talk about the added details right down to the totems, who they were carved by. They are true totems. How they were situated in the lobby. They were very specific in where they were placed, what direction they were facing in. Those are not just decoration. Those were done by native artists and specifically placed to maintain native tradition in that lobby. They spared no attention to detail there.
I mean, I always talk about, how the 90s and the kind of golden era of Disney World with, Michael Eisner, with the building the, beach and yacht club and building Wilderness Lodge. That was a time I'm so grateful for those times, because I think that that's really what made Disney what it is. Why people really loved it was that attention to detail, that investment in creating an immersive experience that wasn't just something that looked like a shoddy recreation of something. It was something that looked like it was authentic. And I think that that's the experience. And I think it's also the reverence. I can appreciate, and we talk about this a lot when we talk about Joe Rohde. I appreciate these Imagineers because they are infusing, they're not just recreating something for the sake of entertainment. They are creating art in what they do. And even if it's a hotel, that isn't a work of art for them. And I do think that Wilderness Lodge really is a work of art in architecture form.
Yeah, I mean, it just highlights how the 90s were the Disney decade. I mean, the original Wilderness Lodge was 1994, I believe. And thank goodness for Eisner being such an architecture geek, and really thank goodness for his ego in having to do everything bigger and better than everybody else, because it shows in this and a few of the other resorts.
I joke that I used to every year order the Disney World vacation planning video. It was like a VHS for a long time, and then they started sending DVDs. Before I had ever seen Wilderness Lodge in person, I was the way that they video, they captured it on video for these like promotional videos that they would send out. It looked so majestic on the video, and I fell in love with it through that before ever seeing it in person. And this was the type of thing where the reality of it even exceeded my high expectations of what it was going to be.
Right
It's
back
like,
to the
that's like
feels.
yeah, totally, the feels. Like this was something that, as I would, this like teenager aspiring to, go to Disney World as much as possible. It was like, at that point, it was like only a dream for me. And I would get these videos as the way, now we have social media. We can immerse ourselves at any moment. But it was like in order to immerse yourself in Disney in the 90s, you needed to be buying the Birnbaum guide. You needed to be requesting the VHS tapes and the DVDs. And when it would arrive in the mail, it was like Christmas Day for me.
And we were all in love with Stacy.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, so like to fall in love with Wilderness Lodge on those videos and then experience it in person was just like, and I think that's why Boulder Ridge will always still like kind of be at the top for me.
We talked about transportation. For as much as I crapped on the buses, I think it's important to note I love the launches around Seven Seas Lagoon. I really do. I like the friendship boats and being able to travel back and forth on Crescent Lake, but there is also something special about the water transportation from Magic Kingdom to Wilderness Lodge. We talked about escaping the madness. One of our favorite things to do when we're staying there is to get on the boat back to Wilderness Lodge just as the fireworks start, and you get to take that across Seven Seas Lagoon and then go over the water bridge, which to my mind is still just an amazing feat of engineering. You go by the garden wing of Contemporary, and then you start rounding that bend. And as soon as you round that bend past the garden wing at Contemporary and head towards the cabins, you have crossed some threshold into Wilderness Lodge where there's this invisible barrier where you go from theme park and craziness and overawed by that to immediate quiet silence into Bay Lake. That, in my mind, is one of the best boat rides on property. And then you get off at that dock right next to the cabins and you make your way through the property. There is some sort of magical transformation that happens on that boat ride where you take a deep breath at some point. And I think it's that last little bend where they sound the horn and it's like a switch has been flipped. I think that is, people talk about the transportation issue and having to take the boats. I love the boats going back to Wilderness Lodge. It's one of my favorite things to do at the end of the night.
I love the boats anywhere. They're my favorite mode of transportation at Disney. It just feels like quintessentially Disney to me. And I think that also is nostalgia as well, because I think going there as a 14-year-old and having that freedom to take the boat from Epcot to Hollywood Studios just was like so cool to me. So like I've always loved the boats. And I agree. I think, and also I like the way those little boats look, like the little canopies.
Oh, you're talking about the Morgan Out Islands, the launches? Those are
Yeah.
actually, believe it or not, repurposed sailboats that have been turned into launches. They're Charlie Morgan designed sailboats.
Huh.
Yep, the geek in
You
me
learn
comes out
something new
again.
every day.
All right, so I think the overarching theme of this episode is we have a whole lot of problems with Wilderness Lodge, yet somehow we still love it beyond measure, which is kind of interesting.
It is. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I think it just speaks to like, if they were to, like, they can't address the transportation issue. That is what it is. Like, you're going to have to take a bus to those resorts. That is what it is. Although I do think that I wish that they would start running the boats to Contemporary a little earlier than 3 p.m. That's something that I would love for them to do. But I think that if they enhance the dining there's any way that they could do something with that feature pool to just make it something a little bit bigger, I don't know, more space, and just fix the darn dishwasher at Territory Lounge.
And bring back the chips. Don't forget Kathleen's chips.
I was gonna say, don't forget the brisket chips.
What were you gonna say?
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, Amy said about the dining, and I was thinking if they just did like a steakhouse, like a rustic menu with maybe some like wild game.
That's what Artist Point was before it was a character dining experience. It was exactly what you're describing.
I think they would just get a lot more foot traffic over there if they had like some kind of a restaurant that was a little bit more affordable, but had like your meats on there, like steaks. You could get adventurous and do the venison and things like that. But yeah, just some great new restaurant over there would make the dining experience a lot better than what they have now.
So just a steakhouse called The Cellar. It's like Le Cellier, but without the silly accents.
The Cellar. That's how we would just say it. That's what I call Le Cellier anyway. But no, just call it The Lodge. Don't we have a restaurant back in Ohio called The Lodge?
Yeah.
And it's a rustic cabin.
Like, I guess it's like what Geyser Point was like trying to be, but I feel like something that has like a tavern feel, you know?
Yeah.
And they can use antlers in all of their decorating.
Absolutely.
Nice reference.
Thank you.
All right, so does that wrap it up for Wilderness Lodge?
It does. I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it.
I have to point out one more thing. At the Boulder Ridge pool, you know, you don't have to reserve those covered lounge areas either. That's always a nice perk.
Oh yeah, we were there.
Yeah.
That was a nice pool. Because any other
Yeah.
place you got to pay for
Yeah.
that, and yeah, that was nice.
So I think it might have been on a Mammoth Club video that I think it was Molly said that like water tower feature thing that they have was actually from the Backlot studio tour from Catastrophe Canyon. And I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, and I don't even remember if she's the one who said it, but I think that is.
So someone said something. We're not sure who said it. And we're not sure what they said.
It's got to be true though.
Absolutely.
true.
She saw it on the internet.
It was on the internet, so it must be true.
We heard it on the Facebook.
So to sum it all up in quintessential debrief fashion, it all comes down to the feels.
Yep.
Yes.
All comes down to the feels.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up for us. As always, if you could go to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review, have some other people join us in our shenanigans and meandering conversations. Amy?
And speaking of meandering conversations, be sure to head over to Facebook to follow us, join the Facebook group DVC Clubhouse, follow us on TikTok and Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and until next time, we'll DVC you real soon.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
And so our journey comes to an end.
Oh, no, please, can't we go back to page 1 and do it all over again?
Started this thing together, and that's how we'll finish it.
Because that, my friends, is where the magic lives.
Happily